I assume you're going to go live like at 9:29 and then, so we're ready to go? Or is it?
We're already live, ma'am. We're ready when you are.
Okay.
Good morning. I would like to call today's meeting,
Yes.
for the State of Nevada Department of Transportation to order for January, no, I'm on the minutes here, sorry. For February 14th, 2022, Valentine's Day. Happy Valentine's Day, everybody. Could I ask the clerk to take the roll, please?
Good morning, Governor Steve Sisolak.
Here.
Lieutenant Governor Lisa Cano Burkhead.
She's running late. She's on her way.
Okay.
Okay. Controller Catherine Burns.
Here.
Member Virginia Valentine.
Here. Happy Valentine's Day.
Member Stephen Esquaga.
Here.
And Member Justin Kelly.
Here.
Governor, you have a form.
Thank you very much. Item number 2, public comment. This is the first time set aside for public comment. Anyone wishing to address the board on any item on today's agenda, please step forward, identify yourself for the record. Comments will be limited to 3 minutes. Do we have anybody in Las Vegas for public comment? No. Okay. Anybody in Carson City?
Good morning, Governor. We don't have anybody signed up for public comment, and I see no one indicating they'd like to.
Okay, do we have any written or electronic public comment?
We do not.
Okay, I'll close public comment, move on to item number 3. Consideration of annual appointment of a vice chair to Transportation Board of Directors.
Governor, typically this position is held by the Lieutenant Governor.
Okay, do we have a motion on this one?
I'll motion to nominate the Lieutenant Governor for Vice Chair position.
We have a motion on the floor to nominate Lisa Cano Burkhead for this position. Is there any discussion on that? Hearing seeing none. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Is that Lieutenant Governor that is now joining us?
Yes.
Good morning.
Good morning, Governor.
Okay, she's with us. Okay, congratulations. You want to comment about masks? Does anybody in Southern Nevada prefer that we wear masks? Anybody immunocompromised need us all wear masks? Okay. So I guess voluntarily everybody took theirs off, huh? Must be a good thing. Item number 4, consideration of appointment of a Deputy Director Jeff LaRue as Secretary of the Transportation Board of Directors.
Governor, Jeff has been serving in this role as an acting capacity since last year. He's now officially in his deputy role now for several months, so we wanted to officially make him the secretary.
Great. Do we have a motion on this?
So move, Governor.
We have 2 motions on the floor. We'll take it as one. We have motion on the floor for the appointment of Jeff. Any discussion? Hearing and seeing none. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Item number 5, Director's Report.
All right, members of the board, thank you for this moment that we can talk a little bit about what's going on at the department. As we always do, I would like to start with transportation safety and traffic safety in our state. In the first month of the year so far in 2022, there were 24 fatal crashes on Nevada roadways. That is actually a decrease from the same time last year, a 27% decrease. This is the first time I think I've said we've had a decrease in well over a year. So that is good. It includes a 25% reduction in pedestrian fatalities, a 40% decrease in motorcyclist fatalities, and a 100% drop in bicyclist fatalities compared to January 2021. While these are promising reductions that we'd like to see, the fact remains that 24 people still died on our roadways this month. Most counties in the state saw their fatalities remain the same or go down compared to last year. All but one county, Clark, actually saw an increase this past month. As we all heard on Saturday, January 29th, 9 people were killed in a multi-vehicle crash at Cheyenne Avenue and Commerce Street in North Las Vegas. Officials say that Gary Dean Robinson of North Las Vegas was traveling at over 100 miles an hour in a 35-mile-per-hour zone when he ran a red light and caused a 6-vehicle crash. In all, 15 people were involved in the crash. 9 lost their lives, and I'm gonna say 7 of their names. Fernando Yeshua Mejia, Adrian Zacharias, Luvia Dalen Zacharias, Brian Axel Zacharias, all of them were kids. Gabriel Mejia Barrera, David Mejia Barrera, and Jose Zacharias Caldera. All 7 were family members of Erlinda Zacharias, who, when she said goodbye that morning, she expected to come home. And of the 6 surviving victims, some of them had serious injuries that they will have to recover from for a long time. The community recently held a vigil in a caravan to honor the victims of this mass casualty crash. And I know it was so meaningful to have you and other Nevada leaders attend, Governor. The caravan drove down Cheyenne, the same street where the tragedy occurred. Those involved hope to bring awareness and urge drivers to slow down, and we echo those pleas. The Nevada Office of Traffic Safety says that last year in 2021, 5,100 citations were issued to drivers going over 100 miles per hour. That is up from 4,400 in 2020 and 3,500 in 2019. I should note, I think a lot of times we think that those speeds are what you see on the interstates, but this crash was not on an interstate. The crash last fall was on Rainbow. There was one the year before on Rampart. None of these roads invite people to drive those speeds. We talk a lot about our role as owners of the infrastructure to make sure that it's designed to be safe, but we don't ever want to make our role absolve anyone from the decisions they're making when they're choosing to be on our roads and drive them in an unsafe manner. All right, next slide, please. I want to just talk a little bit about what's going on the I-515 bridge in Las Vegas. As you know, we are working to replace the bridge at Eastern, and at about 4 p.m. on Thursday, January 20th, during ongoing demolition work of the Eastern Avenue Bridge, one of the girders that we were working to take down unexpectedly collapsed during the removal process. I should note that the integrity of the bridge was never at risk or of concern, and the integrity of the road below was never, it was actually closed for the ongoing demolition work. Unfortunately, one contract construction worker was injured and transferred to the hospital, but he was released, I think, within like 2 hours and back on the job the next day. OSHA cleared work to resume the next morning. Eastern Avenue opened on time the following week, and we appreciate the response from our partners in public safety, including Metro and Las Vegas Fire, for their quick arrival. Safety is our top priority, and we are working with OSHA officials and others to ensure this incident is investigated thoroughly and doesn't happen again. All right, advisory working group. Our last board meeting was the day before our January AWG meeting. And in January, I think I told you we were going to look at a bunch of different funding options and figure out like what we're going to narrow them down. There were 25 options. We were going to narrow them down, or at least that's what our consultant said. In the end, we didn't narrow by much. I'm looking at Mr. Wellman, and he's shaking his head too. We narrowed one. We took one off the table. But I think the good news on this, though, is that everybody's engaged in actively having conversations about how we fill the funding hole, and they want to make sure that we pick the right solutions. Our next meeting is actually in March, and the conversation we had around narrowing down gave our consultant team some really good insight as to what they need to consider when they're putting together a package, because in the end, I think this is going to be a package. We have to look at how do we fill the gap today, and those solutions may not fill the gap tomorrow as cars become increasingly fuel efficient and more EVs enter the fleet. So we are looking at a package, and that next meeting is on March 8th. It will be 100% face-to-face. We have been splitting between Carson and Reno for all of our meetings to date. These next 2 meetings in March and April are meetings where we're going to need to make sure we can see everybody's eyes and see where they're feeling and gut check to make sure that we're all on the same page, because once the recommendations from the committee come through, and I should note that the recommendations are going to be from the advisory working group. They're not from NDOT. NDOT's facilitating the process, but it is an advisory working group of 29 community stakeholders across the state. When those recommendations come through and they go to the legislature, that committee is going to have to help make sure that they get across the finish line. So we want to make sure everybody's on the same page. Next slide, please. And then before I get to our jobs numbers, I just wanted to celebrate a minute and just say, once again, Nevada's bridges are the best in the nation. This year, though, somehow we allowed Arizona and Texas to catch up, so we're tied in first place with 2 other states. In Nevada, only 1.4% of our more than 2,000 public bridges are structurally deficient. That's compared to a national number of over 7%. Our bridges have been ranked amongst the best in the nation for, I think, 8 years now. And you may have heard, in fact, I just said it, structurally deficient, the term. That doesn't mean necessarily unsafe or dangerous, but it does describe that the bridges will be in need of rehabilitation or potential replacement. And oftentimes when they do become structurally deficient, we have to load rate them. I should note the work we're doing right now on the 515 in the middle of Las Vegas is to make sure that they don't go structurally deficient, because if they do, A, that's 10% of our total deck area, so we'll lose our first place standing for sure. But B, we would have to possibly load rate it, which would mean perhaps limiting the amount of freight that could traverse those bridges, limiting the use of those bridges by fire and by emergency responders. So we never want that to happen. So that's why we work so hard to keep our structural deficiency numbers so very low. And as a result, there is construction going on, but we're using our funds and we're making sure that our roads are open for all Nevadans at all times. And then my last slide is contributing to the workforce. Through last month, the board had approved projects that would generate support for 5,252 jobs, 5,252 job years. Through last month on this agenda, there's another 1,017 job years that could be supported. In total, that would be 6,269 job years supported by our program this year if everything gets approved later on the agenda. And that concludes my report.
Great, thank you. Do we have any questions of the director on the report?
I have a question, Governor.
Okay, go ahead, Goldberg.
I'm going about the best bridges. And yes, we are #1 in the country. It's great. And we're talking about some of the bridges where I'm not worried about or say you have a load limit. The alternate route could be way out of their way, could be hours longer. So that was what I wanted to comment about the bridges in the rural areas.
You know, one of the things that we are talking about and working on, and I don't think I've apprised the board of this, is a resiliency plan to really look at that very challenge that you mentioned, Controller Byrne, that if we were to lose a structure, and in fact we did several years ago on I-15, the detour routes are hundreds of miles long, like you recognize, and so we are really looking to make sure that we're aware of where we need to invest our limited resources, and sometimes it's actually in the urban areas, to make sure that we don't have a significant, it may be a short detour, but it affects thousands upon thousands of people, or in those rural areas, we want to make sure emergency providers can get there, and so we're trying to make sure we're prioritizing, again, to make sure that our network meets the needs of all Nevadans.
Very good. Any other questions or comments? I've got, I know we all have the same concern, and a comment as relates to I was kind of shocked when I heard 5,100 citations for people going over 100 miles an hour. Do we have a breakdown? How much of this is rural on the highways? How much of this is on streets? I mean, that's 14 a day tickets, and that's the ones that they're catching. So you can imagine how many that there really are. You know, do we know where the tickets are coming from? Is this a law enforcement issue? It's not a highway issue. Right. And I've talked to car dealers. I don't know why cars have to go 140 miles an hour, but they do. So, and I talked to some of our sports teams, and I understand you get 20-year-old kids that can buy the fastest car that they can possibly buy, and they're going to drive it as fast as they possibly can, but that's not the place to be driving it that fast. Do we have any idea how?
I don't have those statistics with me, Governor, but I will have them for our next meeting. I'll make sure to bring them up because it is a mix. I think I've mentioned several crashes in our board meetings in the last 15 months or so when I've been talking about crashes specifically. They've been over 100 miles an hour, and those have all been in urban areas. Yeah. So I do believe there is a mix. It's interesting, when you get out into the rural areas, the probability of crash is so much lower because there's just not a lot else that you might crash into. So the severity of those citations is much worse here in the urban area, but we'll get that split for you.
If we could, I'd just like to know how many of them are on, the drive from here to Reno, that, it's a 2-lane road that you're on for hours, and how many are on Rainbow or Cheyenne. That's just troubling. Any other questions? Okay, hearing seeing none, that's an information item. I'll move on to consent agendas, item number 6 through 10. Does anyone want to take anything separately on the consent agenda? Hearing none, do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda? Go
I
ahead.
just wanted to provide clarification. Agenda item 6 is approval of the January 10th minutes.
Okay.
I'll motion to approve the consent agenda.
We have a motion to approve the consent agenda, item number 6 through 10 inclusive. Is there any discussion on that? And hearing seeing none. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
No one opposed. Motion passes. Section number 3 and item number 11. Do we have an executive session today?
We do not.
We do not. Moving right along, it's going to be a quick meeting. Item number 12, second time set aside for public comment. Anyone wishing to address the board on any item under the purview of the Transportation Board, please step forward, identify yourself for the record, and comments will be limited to 3 minutes. Is there anybody in Las Vegas? We have anybody in Carson City?
I see no one here indicating they'd like to speak, Governor.
Okay, we have no electronic and no mail comment. That brings us to item number 13, which is adjournment. Happy Valentine's Day, everybody. We are adjourned.
Thank you, Governor.
Quick.
I would
Thank you.